How does a family fracture? Does it crack slowly over years of silent resentment, built up behind the closed doors of a suburban home? Or does it shatter in one explosive, deafening moment that sends shards flying for years to come? On a cold April night in Lakeville, Minnesota, a bastion of upper-middle-class tranquility where manicured lawns are meant to symbolize perfect lives, one family didn't just fracture, it detonated. Two teenage sisters, Samantha and Gianna Rucki, vanished from their home, leaving behind nothing but a chilling set of footprints in the melting late-season snow. No coats against the 30-degree Minnesota air, no backpack stuffed for a journey, no frantic goodbye notes. They simply evaporated into the night. For 2 years, they were suburban specters, their youthful faces haunting missing person posters. But this is not a story of a wilderness abduction or a stranger danger tragedy. The horrifying central twist is that for 773 agonizing days, they weren't truly lost. They were hidden, intentionally and meticulously secreted away within a shadowy network of true believers, less than 3 hours from the home they fled. This disappearance was not a random act. It was a calculated, strategic move in what one reporter for ABC's Nightline aptly called a guerrilla warfare divorce. With this, the heroic act of a desperate mother, Sandra Rucki, pushed to the brink to save her children from the violent, abusive monster? Or was it the ultimate, most cruel act of psychological warfare, a kidnapping orchestrated by a manipulative parent who, upon losing the legal battle, decided to burn the entire board? Welcome to Fractured Fate Files. Today, we dissect a family torn apart not by an outside force, but from within, and explore the terrifying question: what happens when justice itself becomes the weapon? To understand this fracture, you must look at the home movies. 20 years of footage showing David and Sandra Rucki as an affectionate, feisty couple, doting on their 5 children. It was, from the outside, the American dream. But according to Sandra, that dream was a meticulously curated lie. In sworn affidavits and later interviews, she painted a dark portrait of a life lived in fear, detailing years of alleged physical and emotional abuse by David. As she would later tell Nightline, the abuse included hammers at me if he got mad. There was black eyes. There was broken ribs. We had to lock ourselves in the bedroom because we were scared. After 2 decades of this alleged terror, she filed for divorce, obtaining a court order of protection and, according to police, call logs later reviewed by the Star Tribune, calling authorities on her husband at least 20 times for alleged violations. David Rucki, a successful local businessman, presented a starkly different, irreconcilable reality. In his own testimony and interviews, he vehemently denied every single allegation of abuse. Have you ever raised a hand against Sandra or your children? A reporter asked him point blank. His answer was an unwavering no. In his world, he was what has become known in family law circles as a targeted parent, a loving father whose children were being systematically and maliciously poisoned against him, their genuine affection replaced over time by a cold, coached hostility. This is where the court system, forced to navigate a minefield of he said, she said, became the site of the next critical fracture. Family Court Judge David Knudsen, presiding over what became one of Dakota County's most contentious divorces, appointed child advocates and multiple therapists, but the children, especially the older sisters, Samantha and Gianna, sided firmly and vocally with their mother, even making secret audio recordings to bolster her claims of abuse. The judge listened. He reviewed the reports, and then, in a stunning and pivotal decision that would become the epicenter of this entire story, he declared in a painstaking 60-page final custody order that he had received no credible evidence of physical abuse by David Rucki. Instead, the court embraced a different, more insidious explanation for the children's fear and hostility. A court-appointed psychologist, Paul Reitman, diagnosed the situation as a severe case of Parental Alienation Syndrome, PAS. It is crucial to understand what this means. While a controversial, PAS is a legal and psychological concept describing a process where one parent, the alienating parent, wages a relentless campaign of denigration to destroy their children's relationship with the other, targeted parent. It's a form of profound psychological abuse. Judge Knudsen had concluded that Sandra Rucki wasn't a protector. She was a saboteur who had successfully brainwashed her children. This diagnosis was the legal trigger. Finding that Sandra's actions were detrimental to her children's well-being, Judge Knudsen ordered her out of the family home and granted full physical custody to David. On the very day David's sister was to arrive to take guardianship, as mandated by the court, April 19, 2013, Samantha and Gianna enacted their desperate and clearly pre-planned escape, running shoeless into the cold. For months, the case was a black hole, then a bizarre ghost-like apparition. The girls appeared for a carefully managed interview with a local Fox 9 news station. It was a hostage-style, proof-of-life video, a propaganda broadcast from their hidden world. "I'm just really scared it's going to end really badly," a visibly coached Samantha said to the camera. It confirmed they were alive, but it deepened the mystery of who was pulling the strings. And just as quickly as they appeared, they vanished again, back into the shadows. The truth is, they were not lost. They were embedded. Their disappearance was facilitated by a shadowy, self-proclaimed underground railroad of activists who believe the American family court system is fundamentally corrupt and anti-mother. The undisputed architect of the girls' concealment was Didi Evovold, a vocal anti-family court crusader and Sandra's closest confidant. It was Didi and Sandra who drove the girls on that cold April night to the White Horse Ranch, a remote compound in western Minnesota that chillingly weaponized the language of healing. The ranch, run by Doug and Gina Donnie, presented itself as a non-profit where abused children could heal by working with therapy animals. It was the perfect idyllic career. The girls arrived with nothing, no clothes, no possessions, no future. Sandra dropped them off and, astonishingly, never returned. For 773 days, Samantha and Gianna lived on this remote compound, a prison built to look like a refuge. Deprived of formal education, friendships, and any contact with the outside world, their only reality was the radical ideology of their rescuers. Their supposed safety was, in fact, a prolonged state of psychological imprisonment that systematically erased their past and controlled their present. For 2 years, the investigation, led by the Lakeville Police Department, stalled. The network that hid them was disciplined and silent. The case became so high profile that the FBI and the U.S. Marshal Service were brought in. The break came not from a human source, but from a fatal digital mistake. In November 20, federal agents executed a search warrant on Dee Dee Evervold's home. As they performed a deep forensic analysis of her computers and the cell phones, they found the digital breadcrumb they had been hunting for. A single recent photograph of one of the missing sisters, a moment of careless digital pride from their captor. As reported in subsequent criminal complaints, this digital ghost led them directly to the White Horse Ranch. When armed federal agents and local police descended on the remote property on November 18, 2015, they weren't even certain the girls would be there. But they were. The 2-year lie had finally, spectacularly collapsed. The Donnies, their saviors, were arrested. Their claims that everybody knew the girls were there evaporating in the face of federal charges, and the girls, blinking in the sudden harsh light of the real world, were no longer missing persons. They were rescued hostages. The reunion was not a tearful, joyful embrace. It was a portrait of the profound psychological damage inflicted upon them. When David Rucki saw his daughters for the first time in over 2 years, he told Nightline he didn't even recognize their voices. They were strangers, hollowed out by their experience. The girls, confronted by the man they had been taught for years was a monster, broke down and ran from the room. The physical reunion was, in reality, a psychological divorce, the tragic, visible scar of the alienation campaign. This case forces us into an uncomfortable position, demanding we choose between two irreconcilable narratives. Theory 1, Sandra the Savior. In this reality, Sandra Rucki is a Cassandra figure, a mother screaming a warning about a violent abuser that no one in her power would heed. The court system, which she saw as biased and corrupt, was blinded by the unscientific theory of PAS and not only failed her but actively endangered her children. Left with no other choice, she turned to an underground network of activists who see themselves as modern-day abolitionists. In this narrative, Dee Dee Evervold and the Donnies are not criminals. They are heroes who risk their freedom to protect children the state had abandoned. Sandra's crime was not kidnapping. It was a radical, desperate act of maternal love against a tyrannical system. Theory 2, Sandra the Kidnapper. This is the reality the law endorsed and the evidence strongly suggests. Sandra Rucki is a chillingly effective manipulator. When she realized she was losing the legal custody battle, she triggered the nuclear option of parental alienation. she made her children physically disappear. The abuse claims were a strategic fiction designed to win a guerrilla warfare divorce. By hiding them, she ensured her ex-husband couldn't have them, and she could maintain absolute control over the narrative they were fed, sacrificing their well-being, their education, and their entire adolescence for her own vindictive victory. In this narrative, she becomes the primary abuser, and the activists are zealous accomplices in a felony that stole 2 years of 2 young lives. The courts chose Theory 2 decisively. As reported by the St. Paul Pioneer Press, Sandra Rucki was convicted of 6 counts of felony deprivation of parental rights and ultimately served 343 days in jail and on work release. Didi Evervold and the Dogonis also faced convictions for their roles, and the girls, they were returned to their father's custody to begin the long, arduous process of deprogramming and healing. But the central ethical fracture of this case remains. Who do you believe? Did the court correctly identify a master manipulator, or did it fail to protect 2 abused girls? The only undeniable truth is that caught in the vicious crossfire of this parental war, the true victims were the children, their adolescence fractured beyond recognition. This narrative is a detailed dramatization based on publicly available information, including the ABC News Nightline special, Hiding in Plain Sight, court documents from the Dakota County District Court, including the final custody order and subsequent criminal complaints, and extensive reporting from reputable sources such as the Star Tribune, the St. Paul Pioneer Press, and CBS News. This is a real case involving real victims. The themes of alleged child abuse and the controversial Parental Alienation Syndrome, PAS, are complex and emotionally charged. Our goal is not to pass judgment, but to explore the devastating fractures that can lead a family to total collapse. If you are a victim of abuse or are concerned about a child's welfare, please contact the appropriate authorities.